series that I started on disappearances in national parks. I already covered the first case, which was Mike Hartman, a fit, outdoorsy guy, a firefighter that disappeared in the Los Padres National Forest and appeared in an area that was almost impossible for him to reach, with no shoes, and just overall a very strange case in Unsolved Mystery. I told you guys that there were other stories like his. There are several cases of fit men, outdoorsy, maybe even experts in hiking, and how they started to disappear, and how that kind of reflected not even a human, maybe abduction, or that somebody took them, but something took them and placed them in a very particular place that it is very, I don't know, very evident that they couldn't have hiked to that point. If you want to watch Mike's case, I'll have his video on the top of the screen and in the information box down below. But today we're going to talk about Karen Sykes. If you're an outdoor person, you probably know her, at least from her articles, books, and pieces all over hiking and outdoors kind of magazine or online articles. She was very well known for her hiking experience, and she read about her adventures in, again, different articles for newspapers and online. So, just so you have a better idea, she was not only an outdoor lover, but she was a photographer, an author of a book about hikes in specifically Western Washington. That was her specialty. She also had a column called Karen Trails in the Seattle's Time, where she posted hiking related stories. All that goes to say that she knew her stuff, and specifically she knew a lot, and she had a lot of experience in Washington state trails. Okay, but this is where the craziness starts. On June 18th, 2014, at that time she was 70 years old, which means that she has all this experience in hiking that, throughout her life, and she was smart about it. She would, give advice in different articles on how to stay warm or how to avoid heat exhaustion. I mean, that was her job. But on that day, she was actually working and decided to hike Mount Rainier National Park. She was in one of the trails there. And if you're not familiar, this is a national park that is near Seattle, Washington. Now, the idea was that she was doing some kind of research and taking pictures for an article that she was working on. But she didn't go alone. She took her boyfriend with her. And snow. So they were ready. They knew what they were doing, so they carried stuff. Well, particularly Karen was carrying stuff to spend the night if it was needed in case of an emergency. She had supplies for eating, staying warm, and overall spending the night there. But they weren't planning to stay. It was supposed to be a research trip, and this research was going to be done on a trail that, she's been there several times, and I guess she wanted to see this trail with fresh eyes, maybe take some kind of unique pictures and include it in her piece that she was working on. Now, when they reached the 5,000 feet elevation, that's when they found snow. Yes, in June. So Karen, knowing this, she was prepared for this. But her boyfriend wanted to stop for lunch. And Karen told her boyfriend, I'll be right back. I'm going to go for a bit, get a few pictures, and then I'll meet you on the way down. So the boyfriend was supposed to stay and have lunch and then try to go back down. I think that the deal was an hour or so. She was supposed to be back in an hour. And even though she was going to be climbing even more in elevation, and even though there was a lot of snow, she knew what she was doing, so the boyfriend didn't think anything of it. Now, at 10:30 p.m., she was reported missing by her boyfriend, and understanding that she never made it back. Now, interestingly enough, her colleagues and friends couldn't believe it. I'm gonna quote somebody that said, "She is the guru of trails." You might be wondering whether a 70-year-old stage in life, maybe she was experienced when she was younger, but maybe she stopped doing it, or maybe she wasn't that used to as we thought. Well, according to her friends, she did 2 long hikes every single week, that she had experience in climbing, and there was somebody that said that she is the last person anyone would expect to get lost. She had everything to survive. She had supplies. She had the right amount of clothing. It was in the 40s while she was missing. And again, people believed that if anybody was going to survive this, it was going to be her. So, she was last seen by her boyfriend in the Owehai Lakes Trail. Not sure how to pronounce that, but should have looked that up. So they concentrated the search in the immediate area. They had 6 ground crews, 2 dog teams, and an aircraft that scoured the area. 3 days later, they found a female body in a rough, listen to this, in a rough, high, and very steep part of the terrain this was almost like an accident because they weren't looking for her specifically there, because this is a very difficult to access area. Not many people go there, and even the most experienced hiker more than likely wouldn't dare to go to this series of cliffs and valleys, and she had to go through very hard terrain for a really long time in order to make it to where she was. Now, the autopsy revealed that it was Karen, and that she died of hypothermia, which makes absolutely no sense, because she had all the layering that she needed. And according to one of the experts, quote unquote experts in this matter that I was reading online, she had more than enough layers and the type of clothing that you would need for freezing conditions. And again, during that time, it was in the 40s, so it wasn't really even going to the freezing temperatures. So it's very hard to believe that she died of hypothermia. However, this gets even weirder and weirder. The secondary cause of death was a heart disease. She was a healthy person. She was active. She was fit. She was healthy. And she visited her doctor frequently. So, if she had this condition, it was very well hidden, because she had no symptoms, and she had no warnings that, it could have been something that started to develop, recently, and maybe that's why, but her family can't really believe that that was the reason, the secondary reason. The question is, how do you get so lost in an area where it's a very well marked trail? The better question is, how can an expert get lost there? I love hiking, so this case is really speak to my heart, and it's easy for me to judge in my head. I try not to talk about it, but in some cases it's very easy for me to judge their decisions. I've been to some beautiful trails, but that are not very well marked. And you kind of still get a good idea what or where you should go to. Yeah, you may not be able to see markers, but most of the time it's very evident where the path is. However, in this case, the markers were all there, and even with the snow, the investigators concluded that all the markers were visible. So she should have, let's just say it this way, they believe that maybe she went off trail to capture a beautiful picture, and she climbed up higher to try to get a different perspective from a trail that she's been there several times, and it only makes sense to me because I've done that several times for adventures and different little articles that I've shared here and there for photography jobs. And so I get it. Sometimes you go to the same place way too many times, so it's hard to find a little bit of inspiration. But once you climb up higher or you go lower, you gotta put your camera in the ground and see the same trail or the same place from a different perspective. Then that's it. You know, that's how you gain that different perspective, and you can share a different angle of something that probably has been talked about way too many times. But listen, even if she tried to climb up to a ridge or whatever place higher to get a better picture, the problem was that the area where she was, it was impossible. I mean, I don't want to say impossible, but almost impossible to, and I'll explain why. But it's not like she climbed to this higher point. No, she had to go up, then down into a valley between two ridges, and then to get to another valley. I mean, it was a very long hike that you would have to do, and very strenuous and very almost climbing conditions that she would have to endure in order to make it all the way over there. And remember, she was higher than her boyfriend, and at the time the boyfriend was in an area where there was a lot of snow. So, to clear things up, when you look at the ground and you know that it's hard, yeah, maybe you'd get the courage and be like, well, I'll be careful. Which, by the way, hiking by yourself, very hard terrain, it's never a good idea, and it's something that she never recommended. You know, it was one of her rules, so it doesn't make sense that she did that, but the interesting part is, okay, she was hiking this very hard terrain, then it was full of snow, so she didn't even know, okay, if she decided to go there, she didn't even know where she was stepping on. Maybe she was stepping on, you know, a pointy kind of rock. Maybe it was covered in snow, so she knew it was hard terrain, and it was covered in snow, way too deep and way too high, I would say, to safely guess, I guess, where you're standing. And to make things worse, matters worse, she didn't fall, so she didn't have an accident while she was hiking there. She had no trauma to the head. She wasn't trapped in an area where she couldn't get out. She wasn't hurt. She didn't slip while climbing. There is no evidence in her hands, fingers, or pretty much anywhere that would indicate that she had to climb. But where she was, she would have had to climb. And the last scenario that I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought at the time, she had no markings of any kind of animal attacking her. No bear, no wolf, nothing. So when they found her body, she was 1,200 feet above her boyfriend lunch area where she left him. So now this is 1,200 feet above the trail, is no markings, so you're basically guessing where you're stepping on. So, just to conclude, that idea, nearly impossible, even for an expert. Nearly impossible, even if it was good weather. So, of course, they weren't looking in that area initially. Who's gonna do that? How can somebody do that under those conditions? It's impossible. Not likely, according to the investigators. Now, my question is, what happened to her? I mean, again, I'm gonna go back to Mike Hartman's case. Pretty much the same idea. I think for him it was also they found his body 1,200 feet above where they were camping with his friend. So, why would they think that it would be a good idea to climb up when your way out is down? It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It really doesn't make sense for an expert to go against all her advice, to hike a very hard terrain by herself, which is a no-no, and then under the weather conditions that she was. And if, in fact, I mean, it would have had to be, I mean, why did, explain to me how it makes sense to investigators that she died of hypothermia when she had every single bone on her body working, every single muscle. She was wearing the right amount of clothes, the kind of, I mean, even more that she needed for the temperatures. She had food, she had shelter. What does it make you think that she chose to stay there? I mean, why would she stay? She's not hurt. She is a good hiker. I'm sure she could figure out that she needed to go down in order to get out of that mountain. The saddest part is that even though this doesn't make sense, the media didn't really pay attention to all this, I mean, oddities. They covered her case for 3 days while they were looking for her. But then when they found the body, just reported that it was because she died because of hypothermia and possibly an underlying heart condition that could have even been, I don't know if triggered, but you know, with a cold, maybe, you know, it did something to that condition. But that stopped there. Nobody else was investigating what happened. Nobody else was questioning, hey, what the heck? How can an expert get lost? How can she made all the wrong decisions? And did she fly to where her body was found? Because more than likely she didn't walk all the way there. There is no evidence that she made it on her own there. So that leaves us with the question again. What took her up there? What did they want from her? And why wasn't she lucky enough to survive? Was this some kind of an experiment? Was this some kind of a test? Was this something, you know, that we don't want to think about? Because that would mean that we are that people, you know, that people that believe that there's something supernatural out there, that there might be a species, some kind of, I don't know, maybe in the forest or in national parks, or maybe it's out of this world. Is that gonna be us? Are we gonna be realize that it's physically impossible. That, common sense. You don't have to be a genius, you don't have to be a trail expert to understand that the area where her body was found, it's an area that it almost felt like somebody, picked her up and dropped her there. But this wasn't another human being. It would have, it just doesn't make sense. If it was going to be almost impossible for an expert, how can you explain trying to take somebody else with you, even if you're an expert? And why would anybody do that? So the theory of some people of a serial killer in national parks really doesn't make sense in my head. But if you believe that that's what's it, I'm happy to agree, to disagree in that, because even though I am a positive thinker, and even though I try to always see the good in every single situation, I have to be, I have to be real at this point and understand that the laws of how things work, the very hard terrain, it just wouldn't explain how she made it up there. Interestingly enough, almost the same height as my garment was also found in California, so miles and miles away from Mount Rainier. This is one of those unsolved mysteries that I try to come up with a theory, But my theory, it's not a very popular one. And it's not a very quote-unquote sane one, because physically speaking, it would have been impossible for her to be there. It would have been impossible for somebody to carry her there. But something did, so what is it? And why her? The one person that you would think that would survive this, that would use this as an experience to write about how she survived. How? And if you tell me, well, she had a heart disease, or she didn't know, but she died because of that heart disease, I get it. That I wouldn't be sharing this story with you. She had a heart attack. Okay, well, that's the cause of death, so you don't have to be an expert or anything like that. But listen, even if she had a heart attack, don't you find it interesting that she walked all the way to an area where it's almost impossible to get to, especially under the weather conditions that she was in? Do you have a different theory? Do you have a logic explanation of what could have happened to her that I'm missing? You guys are amazing. You leave some of the most insightful comments. Some of you guys, are experts in this, because you watch so many videos about some of the same cases and kind of try to put together your own theory. So please enlighten me if you find a different scenario than mine. Honestly, I would like to make sense out of this, because every time I am doing one of these cases, it's almost like, okay, how can they be connected when they're so far apart? We're in so many, this is an older woman, but an expert. Mike was a young guy, and he was fit. in summer, yeah, maybe he wasn't wearing the clothes that he needed to hike, but you know what I mean. He was also very, he had knowledge. He knew how to hike, what to do in case of an emergency. He was an experienced hiker too, so what is up with this, you know? What is up with this idea of something taking some of these people that... Is it like almost trying to tell us something? Is it telling us something? Is this the way that whatever is taking them is trying to let us know that there's something out there that we don't know it exists? And believe me, like I said in the other video, I believe that there are other species of animals that we have no idea that they exist. We know that some of them live in the deep waters of the ocean that we haven't explored because of how dark and how we can't really be in those deep waters because of the pressure and lack of oxygen and the ability to build something that would withstand that pressure. But if there is a possibility that there are species of animals that we haven't even discovered, quote unquote discover, and if there is a possibility that there might be even some places in this earth that we haven't discovered yet, or different islands with eruptions from the sea that were created maybe recently, maybe a long time ago. So, can we absolutely be sure that this was just bad luck? That she was skilled enough to get to all that, hike all that, in order to get a good picture of what? It's even hard to see the trail from where she was. So what took her? What transported her to 1,200 feet above where she was initially? I guess we'll never know. We know physically what went wrong. But dying of hypothermia, well, you are wearing clothes that are more than good enough. I'm sorry. That was a first red flag. And if I was a reporter, I would have been all over that. And I'm gonna close with this. It's like you find a body and you take it to, they do the autopsy and they say, well, this person starved to death, and then when they open the stomach, it's full of food. So you're like, did they really starve to death? Because evidence support, the opposite. So how can you die of hypothermia when you have more than enough clothes to survive the weather? Specifically in that area where she was. And how can you even give me a secondary cause of death? So after she was dying of hypothermia, then she had a problem with her heart. Well, very convenient, but not likely. Can this happen? I am sure it can happen. But do you know where I'm coming from? Do you get where I'm coming from? Again, please leave your thoughts down below. I think that we all need different theories or confirmation that we're not a little bit crazy. I will continue this series because you guys seem to enjoy it, and I'll share with you different cases that are very similar, okay? So people that disappear in a national park, that they are somewhat found in an area where they couldn't have hiked by themselves or under the circumstances that they were, how they're establish a connection between two very well experienced hikers that showed up in a very not likely area. Please share your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'll see you back here on Wednesday with a soft spoiler.